I started off in the waste paper industry. That's where I started, and before that, I'd worked on the market selling greengrocery, and on the fish and chip shop selling fish and chips, and I'd done all sort of a great variety of different things, and I just knew I kind of wanted to make something of my life, and I didn't have any qualifications really. I went to Germany to sell encyclopedias to the American military, and whilst I was in Germany doing that, I was introduced to the amateur theatre. They had a big amateur theatre thing going on amongst the military people over there, all financed and supported by the government, and started to act as an amateur. Got promoted and transferred to Canada, up to Nova Scotia in eastern Canada, and in the next year or so I was there, and while I was doing it I started to get back into theatre, amateur theatre again, because we worked during the days. I had a lot of nights I was up there on my own. The marriage had all broken down, so I was on my own by this time, and then somebody told me they were doing auditions for the local theatre, for the professional theatre, and sort of just on a dare, I went along and did an audition, and in the end I became an actor.
For a professional, that was for
a professional actor,
so it's paid.
Yeah.
So did you have to leave your job?
Dumped 2 houses, mortgages.
The marriage was over?
Marriage was over.
And just changed your life?
Completely.
What year was that?
1974.
And then
I was 27.
And that was in Canada?
Yeah.
So did you carry on acting in Canada then?
Yeah, did 2 years acting in Canada. And
did you study?
No.
No, you just went straight into acting.
Yeah, well, you see, I mean, it was different. I went into a big company. Like that. I went into they have a Shakespeare festival like the RSC here, so it's like an 8-month season, and you can watch really experienced actors working. You have to understudy, you do voice classes, you do movement classes, all the sort. Obviously not the full syllabus of what you do in a proper theatre school, but it's the beginnings of it, and so it was like a sort of basic training is what it was, and it was very fortunate because I was completely raw, and going from the amateurs into the professionals, I tell you, it's a big jump, and so I did 2 years there. Then I did an audition in New York and did a show on Broadway.
Wow.
And then at the end of it all, I realised that it was all going to be very difficult. I had to make a decision either to stay in New York or to go back to Canada, or in the end, as somebody said to me, look, you're entitled by virtue of birth and the fact that you've trained as an actor to go and work as an actor in England. So I bought a ticket and came back here.
And what happened then?
How
far off was Triangle?
How far off was Triangle? I arrived back here in April '77. I was lucky because the people in New York that had represented me had representatives over here in London, so I had an agent straight away, and I began to get work. I was very lucky. I'd met people in Canada that lived back here. So it's kind of, the door was sort of slightly open. I mean, I was completely unknown, but there were people sort of helping me along, and I got work within the year that I was here, and by the end of the year I was in a play in the West End.
Wow.
And then that went through into 78 I started to get some television work, bits and pieces. 78, the end of 78, beginning of 79. By the beginning of 79, I had a TV series, and then spent the whole year doing the series called Fox. So by the end of 79, I'd done a lot of television work, and then the beginning of 1980, beginning of 1980, I was in the theatre, doing sort of like pucker theatre at the Royal Court, beginning of 1980. And by the end of 1980, Triangle started. So it all happened pretty quickly for me.
Anything that you would mention that made a big difference? Any particular quirky thing?
Well, I think the thing was that you know, I mean, I started off by going to an audition in a tiny provincial city in Canada, about as far away from the mainstream as you can possibly be, and it just by chance, a guy from England who'd been hired to run the Shakespeare Festival, which in North America, in Canada, is massive, and in terms of its importance within North America is quite extraordinary. And he had decided to spend a year going across Canada, sitting in on all the auditions, so that he could see what talent was available. And I walked in off the street when he was there.
Amazing.
So not only did I audition for the local guy, I auditioned for him as well, and that was it. Bang, I was straight away, they hired me locally. I went up to Stratford, a place I've never even heard of. And within 2 years, because somebody in the company that this guy had put together in Stratford had come from England and had an agent in New York, the agent in New York asked him if he could try out for a certain part, and he said, oh, absolutely not, but I've got somebody here that can. And so then the next thing occurred, I get a show in New York. So I was in Italy doing a mini-series, and I read an article in an English newspaper talking about Phil Collins was going to be playing Buster in a film about the Great Train Robbery. And I thought, well, there's no chance of me being in that, because I've already done a film about the Great Train Robbery for the BBC, where I played Ronald Biggs. Funnily enough, in which your dad, as a person, not, you know, as a character appeared. Cate Mackenzie, Small World.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, there's no way I'll ever get that. And the next thing I know, they're on the phone saying, would you come to London and talk to us about being in this play and Bruce Reynolds? So that was a weird old thing. But that was from work that I'd already done and being a certain kind of character and a certain type, you know. So you sort of have to kind of make your mark on the map. You know, people moan about, well, they don't moan, you know, being typecast. You've got to be in a certain box. You've got to be a certain type of actor. Otherwise, they don't know what to do with you, you know?
So what type of actor are you?
Well, I mean, I'm not anymore. I kind of play everything now. But back then I played sort of a lot of villainy sort of characters, really. But then, you know, eventually after, you know, years of working in the theatre doing everything, you finish up with it at the RSC playing Claudius in Hamlet, you know?
And how was it like being in EastEnders? Because obviously the exposure in Britain, I mean, you know, the more people watch soap opera in Britain than they watch anything else.
Anything at all.
Anything at all. And EastEnders and Coronation Street, obviously, are the soap opera. So if you're in Britain in a major soap, you are more than a film star in this culture. So what's that like? What's that like to be such?
I mean, being really well known has huge advantages and some disadvantages. You know, you've got to be aware of the fact that most of the people, if pushed, if asked, if nudged when you're walking down the street, would know who you are. But what you have to understand is that most of the time, as long as you're careful, most of them have got too much on their mind to even be looking to recognise who you are. So if you're careful, you can pretty much walk around anywhere as long as you don't want to be recognised. Some people love being recognised. I don't mind it, but I certainly don't go out to look for it. So you just have to live your life differently, that's all. And you have to enjoy the benefits and steer clear of the downsides, you know?
So are you saying, like, basically, if you just concentrate on your day-to-day living, you can just live your day-to-day?
It don't make any difference at all.
Go on the tube.
Wouldn't go on the tube. No way, Jose. No. You know, going on the tube, that could turn into a photo opportunity. You know what I mean? Oh, can I have a photo? Can I have a photo? Can I have a photo? Because you don't want to disappoint people. And once one person says, "Who's that? What's that? What's that?" Oh yeah, it's Archie Mitchell. Oh no, not on the tube. I draw the line at that. No, I'm afraid you have to. I walk a lot in London. Put the hat on, put the glasses on, pull the collar up, and walk.
And then you're anonymous.
That's what I do, and then I'm completely anonymous.
I understand. understand. So it makes sense.
Yeah, that's what you have to do.
And what about, like, I mean, another actor I spoke to said, look, the thing is, when you're on telly, obviously you're exposed, but he said you have a choice how you live your life. You can either go to every TV Quick Award you're invited to, or you can just go to the things that you want to, just live your life.
Yeah.
So do you get the same thing? You get invited to all kinds of stuff, but you just choose what you do. Yeah.
Get invited to everything, which is wonderful. And you know, I go to quite a lot of it. I rather enjoy it. You meet people that you normally wouldn't meet. I mean, I live a very quiet life. I don't have much of a social life. You know, my life is the kids, the family, and work.
Yes.
A few friends, but not a lot. I don't, you know, sort of like certain like the dinner party, entertaining sort of life at all. And so, in the end, you go out to one of these dudes and you meet people that normally you won't see year in, year out.
You based him on your dad, is that right?
Yeah, well, you know, this is like 150 misquotes based upon me sort of saying, well, you know, it's sort of like my dad. There's elements of my dad in that performance. You know, I mean, my dad was, they would call him bipolar now. You know, he was up and down and up and down. And, you know, when he was up, he was fantastic. When he was down, he was disastrous.
He was a rager, or what was he? He
was a headbanger. He was just like, you know, he went into really horrific rages.
Right.
So, you know, that dark side of him, once you've sort of had that inflicted upon you, then you sort of, you know what that's all about, and that's something you can draw on, you know?
Yes.
That's a side of me.
Yes.
That dark, unpleasant side.
Yes, yes, yeah. And so when you play a character like that, does that get released, that side?
Well, obviously it does, yeah. You know, there's an element of that stuff if it's in there. I mean, it's not really bubbling in there the way it used to, but it's, you could say yes, it does. I mean, it's a way of, there's a release of energy that comes when you're doing that sort of thing. I don't think if you're playing a character like Archie Mitchell on a regular basis, I wouldn't, you know, I didn't find it was a sort of a great release, because I wasn't carrying all that stuff around with me. It's a good way of channeling anger, acting, you know, channeling a lot of feelings, and because the process of unraveling a character and understanding a character and understanding other characters when you're putting a play together in its early stages it's really, it's a very, very fulfilling, can be a very fulfilling, enjoyable and improving thing, you know?
Yes. So do you, when you're doing that, do you make notes? Do you meditate on that character? How do you investigate a character when you're getting involved with a character?
Well, normally what I do with a character is, you know, because there's a certain amount of information that you're given by the writer, and then basically what you've got to do, excuse me, is invent a backstory for him. So you've got to invent a life for him. You've got to invent how he is and what he is and how he feels about life and what he's like on that day when he's in that situation that takes place on that stage. So yeah, you've got to sort of invent your version of the character that's presented to you on paper.
And do you do that by yourself, or do you work with like a drama coach or anything like that?
No, you do that. That's your job. You know, that's what you do, is building that character, understanding them, and figuring out why it is they're doing what the writer has written for them to do.
Yeah. And do you feel like, because, you know, obviously in ancient times, you know, the shaman, the religion, the old religion was the theatre, and the old shamans were like the actors. And in some ways, in our society, you know, where religion is not as important, people are living a lot of their emotional catharsis through actors, through theatre, through TV and film. And someone told me that actually the reason why actors get so many flowers in theatre is because it's important, because they're transforming a lot of people's feelings on stage. You know, people aren't always going to therapy or that kind of thing, but they do go to theatre, and they watch things and they see stories and they identify and they feel emotions. So do you ever sense that, how the audience is getting transformed by by what you're doing.
You can feel an audience. You know when an audience is with you. You can sense it. You know if you are doing what it is you've set out to do with them. Obviously, I mean, if you're making them laugh, yeah, fine. You know that's easy. But you can feel. You can feel an energy coming off an audience if you're really making them feel nervous, feel anxious, feel sad. So it's a sort of, it's an interesting way of earning a living. But because the problem is, it's for the majority of actors don't actually work.
Yes.
Most actors aren't working. Most actors are out of work.
And you've consistently worked.
Yeah, pretty much. But then, I've been really lucky.
Yeah.
That's it. And a lot of actors aren't lucky.
What would you say that luck was? I mean, obviously, like you said, you had these magic moments, but then the magic moments continued. What would you say that?
Well, okay. Look, what I'm saying is that if you're going to be an actor, the given thing is you've got to have a reasonable amount of talent. But on top of it, you've got to have a very, very strong input of luck.